and there was no audio. He totally messed up his audio. Then when he did finally get it out, and when you listen to it, my goodness. I mean, D.C. is filled with political platitudes. Gavin Newsom's trying to get himself there by being president with platitudes. It is crazy what's going on in America right now, but thank goodness for Donald Trump.
Well, over at worldviewreport.com, your daily aggregated news site, let me go there. Worldviewreport.com, because I have an article there today. Here it is. Governor Gavin Newsom of California called on Americans to stand up to President Trump in a nationally televised address. So this is, I guess, how this guy thinks he can become the Democrat candidate for 2028 is to be the head of a insurrection.
Well, yeah, and actually, in effect, the head of an insurrection. Not only did he play a role in the failure of the LA fires last month. I mean, the absurdity of governance in California is clearly on display. You had the LA mayor out of the country, in fact, ran out of the country when her city was on fire. Gavin Newsom looking like a fool through the whole thing. They weren't even willing to open up water resources to fill up already depleted water resources to deal with that fire. So that incompetence was on display. Then suddenly you've got what's happening in LA, which is an organized, planned event. In fact, there is leftist billionaire money, even Department of Homeland Security money from the Biden administration in the organizations that are promoting these riots. And Donald Trump sends the National Guard out, and he's got some Marines staged and ready to go that helped stop this getting out of control. And then Gavin Newsom has the audacity last night to go on television and pretend like this is all Donald Trump's fault. It's really weird and crazy. And the American people this time around are not going to put up with it. They might have kind of put up with it in 2020 to barely get Joe Biden elected. And he was barely elected, and if elected at all. And now we go into this round again, and I just don't think it's going to stick.
Well, it's going to be an interesting cycle to watch, but I think his poll numbers will start showing us real quick that he is on the wrong track, because we just had Mark Mitchell on with Rasmussen last night. Right direction polling is still holding up very well for President Trump right now.
Well, even on the immigration issue, you've still got...
Yes.
There was a poll that came out last night that had nearly 60% support for Donald Trump sending the National Guard in to deal with this situation in California. They're not winning the public debate. But even beyond that, and that's all important, obviously, you got to take political calculations to figure out where you're at, but you don't take political calculations to figure out what you ought to do. Donald Trump is doing the principled correct thing here. He is the adult in the room. And every action that he's taking is helping the situation get better. Every action the Democrat politicians are taking, not just in California and in L.A., but in some of these other major cities where these riots are showing up. It's Democrats. They are our problem in this country right now. Republicans have their weaknesses and often my frustrations with them. But the problems we have in this country right now center on the Democrat Party. They are our problem. They are what is holding us back in any way that we might be held back right now.
And Pam Bondi, she's not playing around. Here it is over at worldviewreport.com. Again, your daily aggregated news site. Pam Bondi drops the hammer. LA rioters face federal robbery charges under Hobbs Act. There you go.
Yeah. Listen, there need to be plenty of arrests and prosecutions here. You need to actually, I'll tell you what, this was another thing we discussed last night, and I think it's really important. We have to get to a place, just like with Congressman McIver over in New Jersey, who assaulted ICE officers at that ICE detention facility in New Jersey a few weeks ago. We need to take a look at where politicians are stirring up this insurrectionist behavior. It's seditious behavior at a minimum. And there are politicians stirring this up. I mean, we ought to take a look at Maxine Waters, who was out fomenting this violence over the last week. And this is serious game, a serious problem, and it takes serious solutions. So it's got to start. Some politicians have to be held accountable, but definitely everybody at these riots who is committing violence should be arrested.
Now, are you going to be in D.C. for the big, beautiful parade on Saturday?
In effect, yes. I'll probably be on the Virginia side of the river. It's going to be very hard to move around. I'm not going to be in the parade itself. We're not going to be going, but we're going to be in vicinity. Yeah. Okay. And who knows? We might head up in there.
All right. Well, if you do you have a, what do you call those? A stick? What do you call those?
Selfie stick.
A selfie stick?
Yeah. So, yeah, Logan and I are very tech savvy compared to other people on this program tonight. But no, I'm kidding. but yeah, yes, I do have a selfie stick, and
There's
we can definitely.
There's only 3 of us involved in this program right now, so I guess I would be that other person.
I'm not saying who it is. I just know it's one other person.
Yeah, it is one other person. This is very true. Very true. And the older I get, the less I want to know. It's like,
I'm older than you are.
Huh?
I'm older than you are.
Yes, I know, but I got a lot of 20-somethings working within feet of me. So my philosophy is, he's sitting over there. Here, can you fix this, Logan?
Yeah, really. Hey, he's a young kid. You got to keep him working. So that's no
right.
problem.
The guy, that's right. So if you go to that parade, bring your selfie stick. Do you have one of those wireless microphones you can clip on?
I do. I absolutely
look at you. Look at you. Wow, Jim. Well, if you do go, let us know, because you should probably dial us up and we can capture all of it on the big machine in the master control, and either go live with it or play it back later. But yeah, definitely. If you do, if you choose to go. Now, what do you make of all this over there at nokings.org? Do you think this is going to be a big nothing burger?
Mostly a big nothing burger. What we do know, based upon what's been happening today and even a little bit yesterday, and Monday, is that there are going to be a few cities with dots on that map that will have people demonstrating. No doubt about it. But it isn't going to be all of them. I think it will. It's going to be something. It's not going to be a nothing. Let me put it this way. I wouldn't say it's going to be a nothing burger, because it's going to get reported on the news and there are going to be demonstrations. Is it in effect a strong show of support for this leftist agenda that is pro-criminal illegals? And then this is a pro-criminal illegal effort. Make no bones about it. They're not standing up for innocent people that just got caught up in whatever system or whatever. They're standing up for criminal illegals. And this video you're playing right now is one example of it. Mm-hmm. So it's going to get coverage, but it's not penetrating the American people. By the way, I saw a meme of this video you're showing that I think is very interesting. They had on the bottom of the meme, it said, you're my government, and down by the police cars. And then they had something up at the top where those people were and said, somehow also my government. There are literally government funds going into this effort. There's an organization in L.A. called CHIRLA. It's the Campaign for Humane Immigrant Rights of L.A. They have received $32 million in their most recent 990 report of government money. And guess where $500,000 of it came from? It came from the Department of Homeland Security under Joe Biden.
Wow.
This group. Now, the other bits of that money are coming from California state and California local government institutions that were putting money into this organization to grant legal help and counsel for illegals to keep them from going out of the country. That is how obscene and absurd our government intervention into this illegal immigration is. It goes deep. It goes well deep into the Biden administration. It goes into, there's what's his name? A billionaire named Neville Roy Singham, who is literally working with and for the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. He has put money into the organizations that are working into this, including CHIRLA. And it's literally a seditious conspiracy that's taking place here to overthrow the American government. And Gavin Newsom brought up January 6th last night. It falls flat One day, literally compared to the size of the crowd, a handful of people that showed any form of violence, not at all like what we're seeing on this video right here. None of the violence quite like this. Some of it bad, don't get me wrong, but none of it like this. A very small portion of people. And here we have George Floyd riots. We had all the way back into the Ferguson riots. And now this year with this, all funded and coordinated with leftist billionaire money, and in this case in particular, government money. Government.
Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene today on what you're talking about right now. Listen to this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a unifying belief of the left, a hatred of America and Western civilization. Anti-Israel extremism is frequently part of a broader anti-Western sentiment. It's why so many of the protesters at the LA anti-ICE riots are flying Palestinian flags while burning the American flag, and why Isra Hirsi, the daughter of a congresswoman who sits on Foreign Affairs, Ilhan Omar, said on her Instagram last week, "From LA to Rafah, there is one common oppressor, death to the colonial empire." She also drew this connection between ICE enforcement in LA and Israel's war against Hamas. For the left, everything can be reduced to white people oppressing brown people, whether it be a BLM riot, a pro-Palestinian encampment, or an attempt to impede ICE from enforcing federal immigration laws. These protests are all organized by the same professional left-wing activists whose intent is to cause as much civil unrest and chaos as possible. Elias Rodriguez, the man who shot and killed 2 Israeli embassy officials last month, was deeply involved in this far-left activist ecosystem. Mr. Carafano, what far-left groups was Elias Rodriguez involved with?
So you raise a really important point, which is why that the threat of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the United States is a bigger and broader problem. Because when we look at the organizations which have supported and encouraged or discussed these—
I'm short on time, Mr. Carafano. What organizations?
So this is the Party of Socialism and Liberation.
Great.
Which has also been engaged in activities like BLM and other riots as well.
Now, would that be linked to Neville Ray Singham? Does that name ring a bell?
He is widely recognized as a major funder of the organization, and that's from Wikipedia. So.
Right. And just to go further on who Neville Ray Singham is, he's the son of a Sri Lankan immigrant and Cuban immigrant. But in 1974, he was investigated by the FBI for his ties to groups engaged against the United States interest. He was a member of a Maoist group. He's also said to be nearly a billionaire and gives his money frequently to left-wing organizations. He's even linked to the CCP. He currently lives and works in Shanghai. He shares office space with a Chinese propaganda firm focused on presenting a positive image of China to the global South. And in 2019, he started a consulting business with Chinese partners active in the propaganda apparatus of the CCP. He has provided significant funding to pro-China media outlets around the world, and he even married Jody Evans, the founder of Code Pink, in 2017. She used to be against China, but she's not anymore, and she's currently co-authoring a book titled "China is Not Our Enemy." You know what's really interesting about this man is he uses the Goldman Sachs philanthropy fund. There's a lot of Americans invest their money with Goldman Sachs, but the Goldman Sachs philanthropy fund is a dark money clearinghouse to obscure his identity, Singham's identity, while facilitating the transfer of substantial sums to nonprofit. Things like the People's Forum, which received over $20 million from Singham through the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Fund, organized anti-Israel protests across the country, and was heavily involved in the protests at Columbia and the takeover of Hamilton Mall. Singham also funds $20 million through the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Group to the Justice and Education Fund, which provides money to pro-China media outlets around the world. And just as you mentioned, the Party of Socialism and Liberation. That's the group that's organizing these lovely events happening in LA that Democrats call mostly peaceful, but the people in LA call fiery, violent, and call a war against America. He also funded, and unbelievably, the pro-Palestinian protests around the country and on campuses, and Elias Rodriguez, the man who killed the 2 young Israeli diplomats. Singham coordinated the anti-ICE LA protest. Again, this picture just can't be shown enough. And they have been coordinating these anti-ICE protests around the world, around the country. And more to come is what the Democrats tell us. Mr. Carafano, one last question. Do you believe China is funding the war against America?
There's a lot of activity in the public record that show Chinese money is flowing into many of these organizations which have been involved in planning and organizing and supporting these activities. Absolutely.
Wow. That was very well done, Miss Marjorie Taylor Greene. Wow.
There's a lot on this guy. So, for example, in May of this year, the Lillian and Albert Small Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., gunman attacked and fatally shot 2, you know what I'm saying? The 2 Israeli people. Guess what? The terrorist, Elias Rodriguez, who did that, this is an article that says that he has links to radical groups funded by socialist multimillionaire Neville Singham. You also have Neville Singham, just a quick background. He's an American businessman and social activist. He's a founder and this is from Wikipedia, founder and former chairman of ThoughtWorks, an IT consulting company that provides custom software. He sold it for $785 million in 2017. In 2019, Singham started a consulting business, and she referred to this, with partners who are active in the propaganda apparatus of the Chinese Communist Party. So it's not like he was housed in, next door to them. He's actually connected into it. So there is Chinese money that is involved in what's happening in this country. Neville Singham is one of the people involved in it. And by the way, it's interesting because a lot of people are talking about, George Soros, and he's got to be involved in this. Well, we don't find any direct connection in the initial behavior that took place in Los Angeles. And Data Republican, everyone should follow Data Republican on X. She's been documenting a lot of this stuff, and most of this information is coming from her, to the point that there are now subpoenas out to find information from the Congress, to find out information on Neville Singham. This is a serious, serious issue. This is coordinated seditious activity, and the people involved in it need to be prosecuted. The Trump administration, and it sounds like Pam Bondi is intent on doing so, the Trump administration needs to aggressively go against this. Because if you do not deal with this stuff right now, when the problem is hot, then you encourage others to come in and cause more problems. There are so many tentacles going into communist China right now with all this stuff that's taking place. We need to take China seriously as a real threat. I don't see Russia as the greatest threat that we've got on the international stage. Far from it. And they're run by an evil leader, and there's a lot of evil that takes place in the corrupt government systems there. But it pales in comparison to what communist China is intent upon doing, both in these situations and in the United States in general. They are our competitor, and they are attempting to undermine our governing institutions and our cultural situation. And they are doing it right now in plain view here in the United States with these riots.
Absolutely. 100%. Let's go to another topic. Your old boss. You were the chief of staff for Congressman Thomas Massie. He is introducing legislation to audit the feds, or audit the gold reserve, I should say, Fort Knox. Now, that was being talked about pretty openly about by President Trump when he first got in, but now we hardly hear near a word about it. You think someone whispered in his ear, there's nothing there, let's not do that? Or no, the vaults are full, so you don't want to do that. Why all of a sudden did that go away? Why is your boss former boss having to offer this piece of legislation? I thought President Trump's administration was going to voluntarily go do this.
I don't have a good answer for that. The whole situation at Fort Knox has been in a cloud of secrecy for decades and decades now. So it's hard to penetrate that vault, so to speak, and figure out what's really going on or what could have been whispered in Trump's ears. I think we do need to audit the Fort Knox Gold Reserve. I think we need to figure out what is really going on there. The American people should know. I mean, come on, even if we confirm there's a bunch of gold there, the chances of stealing it are incredibly low. The security apparatus around Fort Knox is very high, whether there's gold there or not. And if it's not there, we have the government is duty bound to let us know, because there are significant things that rely on that. And it is possible, I'm not saying that this happened, but it is possible that there is no gold there, and that could have a severe impact on financial markets if it was known. But here's the point. Financial markets run on information. I mean, I don't know if people understand that, but financial markets are about information. In fact, economies are about information. There are two major aspects of economics. There's the basic economic principle that economics is the study, it's a social science actually, that is the study of how human beings deal and manage with scarce resources. It's not about how people spend money. It's not about what the financial markets do. In fact, what happens with financial markets, that's finance. That's one aspect of an economy. But scarce resources is what the study of economics looks into. The other aspect of an economy is the price triggers, the price information. And so what you need to do to have accurate valuations of things is effective information that can allow you to evaluate what the real value of something is. And that's what the dollar indicator is. The reason the Federal Reserve is so evil in my mind is because they manipulate the price triggers to affect big players like banks and governments who get first mover advantage whenever the Federal Reserve make changes. What's the first mover advantage? Sorry for the economics lessons here, but I think it's really important for people to understand related to Fort Knox. The first mover advantage is the dollar has a certain value now before inflation sets in, and then everybody that has access to that information that the Fed's going to do and access to quicker movements in the market get all of the advantage of the current value of the dollar. And that is at the moment where the Federal Reserve is instigating inflationary policy. When they print money over and above what the economy needs to function, that's inflationary. So if they print that money, banks can suddenly start moving all their assets and doing the things that they need to do at the present price before the inflation starts to set in, which usually takes weeks or months thereafter. They get all the advantage, and then we pay the price as individuals because we don't have the same kind of inside information, and we don't have quick access to those markets to be able to take advantage of them typically. So this is the problem with the Federal Reserve. Well, if the Fort Knox does not have that money, that is a bit of information that is seriously important to markets and can really affect them. And that is something that people won't get first mover advantage on, because once the information comes out, the effect will be immediate, and people won't be able to take advantage of it unless that information is withheld prior to when these big players are exposed to it, and they get first mover advantage because we didn't give the information. That's how important information is. That's why the Federal Reserve is a scam. They hide things from people. They do things in the background that you have no access to. They take advantage of it with the price indicators at where they are before you can figure out what those price indications are. And it is so horrible that the government even controls anything related to our monetary structure. And Fort Knox is a big part of that.
And that's very interesting. By the way, we do have breaking news. One of the guys with the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, has passed away at 82. That happened. This was reported earlier today. I've always kind of been a Beach Boys fan. I like the Beach Boys music. I have them on my iPhone and like to listen to the Beach Boys, particularly during the summer. Doesn't seem like summer unless I play a few Beach Boys songs. What say you?
Well, listen, no one's going to think that I'm a music expert. I'm actually, I think, more one than most people would realize. My intention was to go to Juilliard when I was young, and I was very serious at music in high school. Since then, I haven't been as much. But let me just say
vocal or instrument?
No, instrumental.
Which one?
I played clarinet, bass clarinet, and my intention was to, at the time at least, my passion was to go in and do music composition. But
do you still play?
I play guitar.
But you can still play the clarinet?
I haven't played the clarinet a lot. No, I don't own one presently.
Okay.
So
I did not know. I learn something about you every night.
But anyway, to Brian Wilson, let me just say this. There is no doubt, and any serious person that looks at the music industry and people who had great success in the music industry, no one will deny the fact that Brian Wilson in particular and the Beach Boys in general had a massive influence on what developed in music in the United States, particularly in rock and roll and popular music of the time. In the 1960s, what they were able to do was innovative, both in terms of the structure of what they wrote in their music and with that, I forget the name of that instrument that just uses electrical waves to make noises, like Good Vibrations, their song is where that was actually groundbreaking. And it changed a lot of what happened in music, but their compositions were amazing. Brian Wilson was the chief songwriter there. So his passing is the passing of a legacy that, frankly, we're not reduplicating in this day and age. We do not have the same kind of innovative and capable, competent musicians that we used to have.
Yeah, the pop culture music today is just trash. Absolute trash.
It is. There are a few really good artists out there, but very few of them. And when I say good, I don't mean necessarily even that they have morally good music, but when I'm talking about music
talent,
capability and talent. Very little of it. Very little of it. Because they don't have to fight as hard, and many people won't fight. I was listening to Gene Simmons, the lead singer of Kiss, for so many years. I saw an interesting interview with him recently. He was talking about the fact that great artists can't come in like in his era, can't come in like they used to because the industry didn't keep up with the changing technology. So people cannot reap as much of the benefits of the hard efforts that they put in. And
that's because their music gets played over and over. The music gets played over and over and over and over and over, and they don't get paid for it.
No. So this is a passing. This is one of those interesting generational shifts in music. You don't replace a Brian Wilson. You just can't.
Yeah. Well, there you go. A little pop culture along with the politics. TheConservativeCaucus.org is his website, TheConservativeCaucus.org. Ours, Worldview Tube, and if you appreciate our broadcast, one way you can support us is WorldviewFoundation.com to keep pushing out free educational programming. Take care. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview. Tonight on the Worldview Report, Gavin Newsom sues to get President Trump's National Guard troops kicked out of Los Angeles, and his request gets quickly adjudicated. President Trump warns protesters not to show up in D.C. for this Saturday's military parade, while saying he would not rule out invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807 to deal with rioters. Another Chinese scholar is arrested for trying to smuggle a dangerous bioweapon into America. RFK Jr. fires an entire vaccine advisory board at the CDC. And the leader of a notorious Islamic terror group has called for President Trump and several of his top advisors to be assassinated as revenge for their pro-Israel stances. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. I'm Brandon House. Leading off tonight, President Donald Trump suggested on Tuesday that he could invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and allow the U.S. military to be used for law enforcement purposes. National Guard members and Marines called to Los Angeles by President Trump there to prevent violent protest. They can otherwise only serve in support roles and protect federal buildings and federal personnel. President Trump said, quote, "If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We will see," end quote. The last time the Insurrection Act of 1807 was invoked was in 1992, when President George H. Bush ordered the National Guard to Los Angeles at the request of the state. That, of course, was following the trial of 4 acquitted police officers involved in the Rodney King beating. By the time the National Guard arrived, the riots had mostly died down. That's according to the Brennan Center. This time, the National Guard was deployed without the support of the California governor, Gavin Newsom. Speaking to reporters, President Trump alleged that there were, quote, paid insurrectionists, end quote, among the protesters. The stated purpose of the protests has been to oppose President Trump's immigration policies, especially his highly touted plans for mass deportations. President Trump said on Tuesday, quote, "If we didn't get involved, Los Angeles would be burning. Los Angeles right now would be on fire, and we have it in great shape. We are not playing around," end quote. That begs the question, if LA is in great shape, why would he need to invoke the Insurrection Act? The president told reporters that he spoke to Newsom on Monday, stating, quote, "Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death," end quote. Newsom, well, he responded saying he did not talk to President Trump. Well, they cannot both be telling the truth. And so the White House came out, according to reports, with screenshots of the phone call, proving a phone call between President Trump and Governor Newsom actually took place. Speaking of Governor Newsom, he announced on Tuesday he is seeking a temporary restraining order to block President Donald Trump from deploying troops to Los Angeles to deal with those riots. Newsom wrote, quote, "Trump is turning the U.S. military against American citizens. The courts must immediately block these illegal actions," end quote. In the motion that was filed on Tuesday in the U.S. District Court in San Francisco, Newsom and state officials argued that they, quote, "seek to preserve, in part, the status quo by temporarily enjoining defendants from ordering or deploying the active duty members of the military and